Okay, I'm back from my trip to Gamescom, and I saw and played quite a few games, and I just wanted to talk about them. Always as a disclaimer, like I've played work in progress or preview versions of games, so don't take this as me saying like it's gonna be the best game ever. I just like kind of checked out little bits of games, maybe it's 20 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes, something like that, and I wanted to just bring you guys some information. I didn't get to play as many games as I wanted to. It's a really overwhelming convention, but I got a couple of interesting things here. The first game I played is Reanimal. I was really excited about this one because this is the newest game from Tarsier Studios, or Tarsier Studios. I don't know how to say the name, but they're the people behind Little Nightmares 1 and 2. I've talked about it a lot on this channel at this point, how much I like those games and how much I like that little genre, being like a little creepy guy running around. When it was shown off at Gamescom opening night live, I did talk about that a little bit in my previous video, but now I got to play it. I got to actually get my hands on a controller and go through a couple of sequences. And to be honest, it's straight up what you'd expect. It is another Little Nightmares game. Of course, Little Nightmares is still continuing with a different developer under Bandai Namco. So now this studio went off with a different developer, and they're doing their own thing now. But they're very much making what they are comfortable with. It's co-op, two little people adventuring in a big, broken down world. This world feels a little bit more realistic and less fantastical. It feels a little bit more post-apocalyptic-y. Apocalyptic-y? Why do I always screw up that word? And I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself from another video, just like summing this up, but in this one, where Little Nightmares was like weird, grotesque, people-esque things, here it's weird, grotesque animal creatures. So that's really nasty and gross, and what I did get to see here is escaping from one of these nasty creatures. You're ducking behind things, they're searching, they're reaching for you. If you've played a Little Nightmares, you should know what to expect here, but there's a little bit of dialogue. So these characters are brother and sister, and they can speak, but not a lot. Speaking to the developers after the fact, it seems like they're intent on not really screwing up their flow, how they do things, how they tell these stories, how minimalist they are. The dialogue here is going to be very, very slight, small, necessary, kind of like kids mumbling to themselves as they're going through a hellscape. Nothing more than that. But I did find it interesting because it's different for the studio. Also, journeying around by boat. There are certain sections of the game that are flooded, and you're kind of like puttering through on a boat with one person looking with the lantern and one person steering the boat. And that can make for a lot of interesting horror moments. It can also make for like a little bit of like diverting off the main path a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of that here and there, but they also didn't make this an open world game. It seems like they are very aware of how they do things and like what works, and quality over quantity, which I'm glad to hear. What I'm curious to see still is how else the player engages with the world. I picked up some keys, I unlocked things, I opened some things, I knocked a couple of things down, but you know, all their games usually add a little extra snippet of how players engage with the world and how they interact. So I'm curious to see what exactly that is. I haven't seen that yet, but in terms of style, atmosphere, mood, all that, this one is working for me. Another one I got to check out is the first Berserker Kaisen. This one has been hyped up for a little bit now once it was first revealed. It's also based on an existing franchise. I did not know that. It's the Dungeon and Fighter franchise. It's been around for almost 20 years now. I didn't know that going in, and I guess that's okay because I was able to essentially play the opening hour of the game and really experience this story for the first time, and it's pretty cut and dry. You are this badass, powerful warrior guy that was seemingly wrongfully imprisoned, and you're caged and you're taken through the snowy forest, but then suddenly there's an attack and an avalanche. You're half dead, so you stumble upon this ancient power, seemingly evil power, and you embrace it to live, and then you go on and you basically do kind of like a Souls-like hardcore action RPG type thing. To me, it seems very much like that. Like you collect something kind of like souls. You can lose them if you die, and if you don't get them on your second attempt, you rest at bonfires and you spend these points on things like strength, endurance, all that. And it is very challenging. I squared up against two bosses. One absolutely destroyed me, but what I like that this game has is a lot of good abilities on the bumpers. Like you hold a bumper down on the controller and it essentially accesses your square, triangle, circle, X for more additional overpowered abilities that you kind of spend mana on. Those attacks are really, really satisfying. There's one where it's a big slice and a jump backwards, a massive whirlwind spin, like just big, crazy, overpowered stuff, because you're essentially playing as like Nightmare. Like, you look like Nightmare from Soul Calibur, which I am okay with, but it's bloody, it's flashy. For me, the biggest thing was the art style. This is going from more of like a cel shaded kind of anime cartoon style thing, like how Code Vein, like that art style. Think of something like that here. That was working for me, and even though I'm playing an early version of the game and just testing it out, it was pretty smooth, but again, it was brutally challenging. Apparently there was a third boss I could have gotten to, but I just kept getting wrecked. Also, your boy, the city builder nerd, I did get to check out quite a bit of Ara History Untold. This, to me, feels like a direct competitor to something like Civilization in some interesting ways. Number one, and I'm not comparing it to Civ 7 because Civilization 7, because I haven't seen too much of that. But in general, it's very gorgeous, it's very detailed, and it's very comprehensive. It seems like you can actually avoid warfare and conflict even more in this game compared to something like a Civ, which is interesting. But I really liked being able to zoom in hyper close and see individual villagers, individual warriors. You could click in and go into a battle mode and see them actually wage war and fight or hunt when you conduct those actions, but also just how the world is built out, how the segments work. It's not hexagons or tiles or anything like that. They're divisions that you select, but they're all kind of naturally formed, whether it's the shape of the land, maybe there's a plain, maybe there's a rock edge. So that dictates essentially how you build. Natural barriers actually make a difference, like having a mountain actually will block your acquisition and your territory and stuff like that. Little creative things like that. I'm just curious to see how far they go with it. It does seem pretty accessible while still having a shit ton of information. Like a Civ game, you hover over a million things and you're like, what's that mean? What's that mean? What's that mean? Holy shit, there's so many things to keep track of. Ara History Untold definitely seems to be doing that. I'm just curious to see what else it's gonna really do to stand out and be different from these other games. I think they're onto something here, and as like a city builder, or really here, like a strategy game person, I'm excited to see just another one on the market, essentially. Briefly, I also got to check out Warframe 1999 and talk to the developers behind that and just see what they're cooking up. I spoke with them specifically because, like, open-minded, also have not touched Warframe since the very beginning, but that game has continued to consistently grow and get players and be interesting and be one of the live service games, the few live service games that it seems like people don't hate. I really just checked this out just to understand. And what I came away with is that the 1999 update, which is going to be free, just seems really cool and interesting. Stylistically, it's something completely different going on. The in-game music embraces stuff from the late 90s and how it does mashups and stuff. They have like their own versions of like a boy band, of like a kind of like a Korn, like those types of things in the game, which is very cool. But then as you go through this event in this unique and pretty good looking world, like once you jump back into regular Warframe, you're able to carry some of that stuff over, like a motorcycle that you can ride, that you can do flips with. I'm a simple man. I see a motorcycle do like a cool flip dodge thing, I'm immediately interested. So I went from not knowing anything about Warframe to at least considering trying to get onboarded and really get involved when 1999 drops, because like aesthetically it just looks very interesting to me, but we'll see. Also, this isn't something I played, but I didn't get a chance to talk about this in the previous Gamescom video or anywhere else. Secret Level is that thing that was announced at opening night live. Tim Miller, Hollywood guy, director of like the early Deadpool movies, has been involved in many projects, is spearheading this Amazon show. I believe it's Amazon, and essentially every episode, it's like a bunch of vignettes and stories and interesting things centered around different video game franchises. We saw glimpses of things like Sifu, Armored Core, like Pac-Man, Mega Man. They got Concord in there, which is kind of unfortunate, but hey, whatever. Warhammer 40K, The Outer Worlds. This is the word I should have used before is anthology series. So I think that's pretty interesting. I think that has a really good approach to these types of things, right? So instead of a developer or a publisher really investing millions and billions of dollars and working with a studio to make a massive video game movie that could potentially flop, they're trying to put their stuff out there in these ways and see if people respond to them. And I think that's potentially pretty cool. From what I have heard, they're all going to be kind of different lengths. Some are going to be shorter, some are going to be longer. And the only thing I will say is just being on the ground at Gamescom, it does seem like the developer sentiment behind the scenes, like a lot of them are actually pretty excited about this. Granted, we don't know if it's actually going to be good or not. They could come out and completely bastardize some of our favorite game franchises. But at the very least, all I was able to take away is that just like speaking to people behind the scenes, the sentiment is excitement behind this. So that's cool. I don't know. I just want things to be good, but we'll see. That stuff is always kind of hit or miss in my opinion. But another game I got to play is called Towerborn. This didn't initially interest me until I found out it was the people who made the Banner Saga. The Banner Saga was really cool. Interesting gameplay and storytelling, incredible art style. They're really changing it up here with Towerborn, but in my opinion, it's a good idea. It's like a 2D brawler beat 'em up game, like an old school type of thing. Like think like more recently Shredder's Revenge, but like a Streets of Rage or something like that. But it's fantasy and it's designed to like keep you playing. Like there's different instances you can drop into. You're working through a whole open world map. You're loading into those instances, drop in, drop out co-op. You're building a character, you're gathering loot, you're doing different class styles. So it's taking the just like simple run around in a weird 2D plane punching guys to like an RPG level, which I think is very creative. So you have these maps, right? And you're clearing it out almost like a fog of war, but then you can jump on your friend's map or your friend's world and then help them work on their map. And you can kind of switch back and forth and interchange and keep your loot and stuff like that. And I just think this has potential for people who are into those types of things, those RPG grinder loot type of things. But for me, as somebody who just likes a regular old beat 'em up, you know, I like this different spin on the formula. It also has some of that Banner Saga style art. The characters, the actual approach to the art design is different. Like they're using a different thing here, but you still see glimpses of like creative character designs and also beautiful kind of hand-drawn backdrops. So I don't know. I went from barely knowing anything about this damn game to keeping my eye on it. Good boy. Good boy. I got to talk about the sponsor, okay? This episode's brought to you by This episode's brought to you by Vessi. If you're new around here, Vessi is the dependable, comfortable footwear that I've been recommending for quite some time now, specifically because, of course, they have great styles, shapes, colors for everybody, but also the fact that they're 100% waterproof, man, which means you get a little more adventurous when you have a waterproof shoe. It doesn't feel like a waterproof shoe, and yet your feet are totally dry, cool in the summer, warm in the winter, and it's good for jogging, going on hikes, stepping in puddles in the city. The versatility is really on display here. And just recently, I scored a pair of their newest kick, the Courtside Classic. This is definitely a court-inspired, kind of old-school shoe, but a lot of good premium little looks to it. Rubber midsole, outsole, easy to put on, comfortable. It's also got like kind of a new little fresh old-school style logo on the tongue. So really, with all Vessi shoes, whether you like to just keep things simple or maybe you got your hype sneakers that you can't wear in the rain, they got you covered. All you got to do if you want to check them out is click the link in the description down below or head to vessi.com/onjake. There's a QR code here if you want to check it out, and when you're there, you get 15% off your first purchase. So that's vessi.com/onjake for 15% off your first purchase, and big thanks to Vessi for sponsoring these videos. Now let's get back to it. Another one, this is a multi-platform game. It's called CLA Obscure Expedition 33. This was announced a couple of months back with a very cool, flashy trailer and glimpses of a kind of JRPG turn-based combat style. I didn't get my own hands-on with this one. I had a developer walk me through it. I was able to also confirm that it is the game running in real time, but I don't want to mince words. From all the games I glimpsed at, took a peek at, this is my game of show. This made me leave the room feeling incredibly excited, specifically because it's something new. It's totally different. It's just this own new adventure franchise thing, whatever you want to call it. People bitch about remakes, sequels, anything like that. This is a completely new thing. Is it a love letter to things like Final Fantasy VIII, maybe, and some kind of cool like Xbox 360, PS3 era like big budget action adventure fantasy games? Yes, but it's got its own style to it, interesting look at characters, a really interesting combat style. So the combat is like turn-based, like something like a classic Final Fantasy or really anything like that, turn-based. But when you initiate turns, you also have the option to kind of engage with something sort of like a quick time event for damage bonuses, but that goes the other way. When enemies attack you, you have the ability to try to, in real time, dodge or parry those attacks. So it's turn-based, but with a little extra something else on the side. And this actually is kind of more of a risk-reward kind of gamble type thing. Dodges are a little bit easier to pull off, but those parry blocks require very specific and brutal timing, so it might not always be worth it, but I just thought that was a fun little spin on these things. And along with that, just these characters, this world, which I didn't really get too much of a glimpse of the story other than character interactions. And just the characters interacting with each other, there is a lot of famous voice actors and people behind this. I was able to immediately be interested in what's going on. I got to see the main character, Gustav, essentially be reunited with his sister in a heartfelt cutscene, and the music, the presentation, the actual writing and dialogue and acting pulled it off. I just came in totally blind and I was like, oh, this seems like a good scene. Like this, there is emotion here. This is good. This could be an interesting story. That, like the unique style of the clothing, buildings, the world they're in, this weird fantasy world. I still don't know a ton about the actual plot or where they are other than what was revealed in that initial trailer, but it just feels so cool. The characters seem memorable and iconic. The battle system seems fun. And again, like I said at the start, it's just its own new fresh thing, and I think that's worth at the very least paying attention to. I hope it's good. I don't know for sure yet. The game is still very much in the works, but I want to be one of the first ones on record saying Expedition 33 could be cool. At the very least, I'm looking at it. It seems like it might be up my alley. Another thing I did get to see is a lot more Indiana Jones and the Great Circle gameplay. I did talk about this in my previous Gamescom video. I dropped all the juicy details there if you do want to see it. I saw like 25 minutes or so of gameplay running, a lot more of how things go down. It is very much Chronicles of Riddick inspired in terms of gameplay feel and stuff like that, and I am into that. So if you do want to hear that, I will just point you to my other video, check that out. But otherwise, like, I will just say that Indiana Jones, at the very least, is looking better than I expected. I wasn't really sure what to make of this one, but now I'm a little bit more hopeful. And it's another game where it seems like they're going for quality over quantity. But the one that probably many of you guys came here for, I read the comments, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I didn't talk about the reveal trailer at opening night live or anything like that because I got to play it. I got to play quite a bit of it. I wish I had more time with it because it is such a hard game to just get a very brief glimpse of, but I got to see one of the two maps. So now the game is divided into two apparently very big maps, like bigger than the first game, with one map being kind of all wide open nature and one being a little bit of nature and little surrounding towns, and a lot of the map being taken up by a giant city. I got to roam this city and it was pretty awesome. It looks very much like Kingdom Come Deliverance, like what we've seen in the first game, but just on a much deeper level, way more to it, a little bit more varied districts to it, a lot more interiors, and I got to engage in a pretty lengthy mission, seeing Henry, choosing what he says, all around this like sword instructor and other people in the town having beef with him because he's like from a different district, and me backing this guy up and trying to help him, and ultimately going down this whole rabbit hole of stealing something from the rival group at their home base. So I got to do a little stealth, little tiptoe in. I waited until nighttime, so most people were sleeping. I snuck in, I stole this thing, I placed it somewhere to signal a dual challenge. There's that little bit of variety to how you approach missions and stuff like that, and how it affects things. It's not just choosing dialogue options. In this instance, it was if I got spotted stealing that thing, later on when that duel went down, there would be less trust, and it would be acknowledged that I was spotted, so nobody trusted them, so they would have more armor and it would be tougher. So little things like that. I got to see a lot of like those almost immersive sim style options and choices. Like I wouldn't go to that level yet. I wouldn't say that, but variety is good. A little bit of freedom is good. I know they're going much deeper this time around with like having kind of different character builds and specializations. So to be able to work with that a little bit here was cool. I did get to do only one sword fight, and it is very much still that type of combat. It seems a little smoother this time around, a little less janky, the interface a little bit better, but it is still very much that same type of challenge and, you know, focused strikes and that whole thing. So some people loved that, some people hated that, but ultimately, when I got through that whole quest, I spoke to the developer after, and he kindly informed me that that was just a side quest, which I was pretty blown away by because it had the writing, it had some cutscenes, it had very unique feeling moments. It had stuff in interiors, it had stuff out in the streets, it had all these different branching ways and things that could happen. And I was very impressed. You know, it took me like a half hour, 40 minutes, and damn. So I'm kind of stumbling over my words here, but it's just because I'm trying to get as much info in as possible. But I needed to see so much more of that game. There's so much more to it. I didn't get to really see any of like the survival elements and how those have been tweaked, anything like that, or exploring outside of the city. But the little glimpse I got, it was promising. There are a couple of other things I got to see that I didn't have time to talk about in this video, but ultimately I wanted to hit some of the big guys and some of the more smaller indie interesting games for you guys. But Gamescom itself is interesting, man. There's more I wanted to play, but you know, some places were booked up, some lines are really long, and you got to deal with that. I would say even still, as the first time I went to Gamescom, as a first-time Gamescom attendee, it's awesome. I think it should be on every gamer's bucket list. It's massive. It's huge. People told me how big it was going to be, but I still was not prepared for how massive this convention is. And, you know, people and conventions and crowds, I usually don't like them, and everybody's like coughing in your face and it sucks. But just being around other people that are excited about the same type of shit you are always is a good feeling booster, a vibe booster, you know? So with that, also just the spectacle, you know, with E3 not being a thing anymore, it's been a while since I've walked out to a show floor and seen massive booths for things and big statue. There was like a giant Goku, there was a Fatal Fury booth, there was all this cool, awesome stuff, and people just excited to be there and check out the games. Assassin's Creed Shadow, is that what it's called? Why don't I remember what it's called? Yeah, AC Shadows. Had a massive booth and presentation. It's a game that I personally have talked a lot of shit about, a lot of people have, and yet even still, there were people lined up around the block just excited to get a glimpse of that game, take a photo with a guy dressed up like an assassin. I don't know. It's just like we are a small fish in a big pond. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but just the whole thing itself. Meeting a lot of passionate developers, big and small, excited about their games. Eating German food, this convention center that's actually easy to manage and so much better than a Comic-Con or a PAX or anything like that. Very easy to figure out while alarmingly massive. It was just a really good time. It is an expensive trip. It is a daunting trip, especially if you've never been to Germany or Europe, but I definitely think it's worth it at least once. Go with some friends if you can. I don't know if I'm ever going to go again. I'm going to try to, but at the very least, I'm glad I went. Also, just shout out, like I was lucky enough to run into and meet quite a few of you and have good conversations, so thank you if you did say hi to me. I had a blast meeting you, but also the live show that we did with Friends Per Second, the turnout was great. We had a ton of fun on stage. We had Ben Starr from Final Fantasy 16. We had Alex Jordan from like upcoming games like The Altars, and he's in Dragon Age as well. Really cool stuff, a lot of fun. We had to re-upload the video because of sound issues, but that should be up soon. When it is up, I'll link it in the description down below. But thank you if you came to that. Thank you if you just watched some Gamescom videos, whoever you are. I have talked for way too much today. I'm actually losing my voice. So if you like this video, do you get what I'm trying to do here? Clicking the like button helps me. Thank you. But I want to hear from you guys in the comments. If you've ever been to a Gamescom, if you were at this one, what you really enjoyed, if you're just watching or reading coverage online, what are you into this year? There's a lot we could talk about, so hit me up. But that's it. Again, I've talked way too much. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me. See ya.